It was the early 2000s. The internet was booming, a digital gold rush where websites sprouted overnight, promising connection, convenience, and freedom. But hidden beneath the shine of this new era, a darker marketplace was growing. And at the center of it all stood Backpage.com, a website that would become one of the largest online sex trafficking platforms in the world. But before we get into today's disturbing case, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts down in the comments. This is the horrifying story of America's darkest marketplace, Backpage.com. It all begins not in Silicon Valley, but in Phoenix, Arizona. Two men, Michael Lacey and James Larkin, are at the center of this story. Michael Lacey was born in 1957, the son of a construction worker. He grew up in the suburbs, sharp-tongued, quick to challenge authority. By the time he was in college at Arizona State University, he already had a reputation: brash, defiant, the kind of man who loved taking on the establishment. He never finished his degree. Instead, in 1970, he co-founded a scrappy underground newspaper with a group of friends, the Phoenix New-Times. James Larkin was born in 1949, a little older than Lacey, and he came from a working-class Irish Catholic family. Larkin was quieter than Lacey, less of a showman, but just as relentless. He dropped out of Arizona State too, and soon joined forces with Lacey. Together, the two men built a publishing empire. By the 1990s, they controlled a chain of alternative weeklies across the country, papers like the Village Voice in New York and the LA Weekly in California. They prided themselves on hard-hitting investigative journalism, on pushing boundaries, on printing what others wouldn't dare. But the newspaper business was changing. Classified ads, once a major source of revenue for print papers, were moving online. Craigslist was exploding. Lacey and Larkin were old-school newspapermen, but they were also businessmen. They saw the writing on the wall. And so, in 2004, they launched their own online classified site, Backpage.com. At first, it seemed like a smart move, a place where people could sell a car, find a job, rent an apartment. It was clean, efficient, profitable, but hidden inside its categories was one section that would define its future and its downfall. A small link labeled simply Adult Services. The first ads were vague, even coy: discreet companionship, exotic modeling, relaxing massage. But it didn't take long for the truth to become clear. This wasn't about dating. This wasn't about massages. This was about sex. By 2008, the adult section was booming. And when Craigslist shut down its own erotic services section in 2010 after public outrage, Backpage became the undisputed king of online sex ads. The numbers were staggering. By 2012, Backpage operated in nearly 1,000 cities across 97 countries. Internal estimates suggested that adult services brought in $22 million in just 1 year. By 2014, that number was even higher. Prosecutors later alleged that Backpage generated more than $500 million over its lifetime, almost all of it from sex ads. Here's how it worked. A trafficker or a pimp, or even a woman working independently, could create an account. They uploaded photos, wrote a short description, sometimes coded, sometimes blatant. They paid a small fee, maybe $5 or $10 per post. Backpage employees would review the ads, but that review was not about removing illegal activity. It was about making sure the language wouldn't get them into trouble. If someone wrote "teen girl fresh young," a moderator would quietly delete the word teen but leave the ad online. Emails uncovered years later proved this. One staffer wrote, "Editing the language doesn't change the content. These ads are for sex." For buyers, it was simple. Search your city, click an ad, call the number. Within hours, a meeting could be arranged. It was efficient, anonymous, and hidden in plain sight, but for victims, it was a trap. Take CB, a 15-year-old girl from Minnesota. She ran away from home after a fight with her parents, thinking she'd be safer on her own. Instead, a trafficker found her, took her in, photographed her, and within days her face appeared on Backpage. She was sold night after night, advertised like a product, her childhood stolen before she could even drive a car. Or M.A., a 13-year-old in Boston. Her pimp, a grown man who knew the law well, used Backpage for years to advertise her to men twice, even 3 times her age. He made thousands, but she lived in terror. Stories like these piled up across the country. Mothers searching desperately for missing daughters found them smiling back from Backpage ads. Police sting operations repeatedly uncovered minors being sold through the site. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children eventually reported that nearly 73% of child trafficking cases they handled involved Backpage. And yet, through all of this, Lacey and Larkin stood firm. They claimed Backpage was not responsible for what users posted. They insisted the First Amendment protected them. They called themselves publishers, not pimps, but behind the curtain, the truth was darker. By 2015, the U.S. Senate had taken notice. Senator Rob Portman of Ohio launched an investigation through the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Over the course of a year, the committee gathered 1.1 million documents from Backpage. What they found was explosive. Emails showed executives instructing staff to strip out incriminating words, Lolita, teen schoolgirl, while still posting the ads. One memo admitted flatly, Backpage knows that many of the ads are for prostitution. In January 2017, the Senate published its findings, an 845-page report detailing how Backpage executives had knowingly facilitated trafficking, laundering millions of dollars in the process. But still, the site remained online. Until April 6, 2018. That morning, federal agents in Phoenix, Dallas, and California moved in. The FBI, the IRS, and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service executed search warrants, seizing servers and freezing accounts. By midday, Backpage.com was gone, replaced with a chilling banner. This website has been seized by the FBI, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. 7 executives were indicted. Michael Lacey, then 70 years old, and James Larkin, 72, were both arrested. The charges: facilitating prostitution, conspiracy, and money laundering. Prosecutors alleged that 99% of Backpage's revenue had come from adult services. The case dragged on for years. In 2020, as trial loomed, James Larkin died by suicide, found in his Arizona home. Michael Lacey continued to fight, his trials delayed, his lawyers arguing that Backpage was no different than a newspaper running personal ads. But the evidence was overwhelming. Meanwhile, the political fallout was enormous. The scandal fueled the passage of FOSTA SESTA in 2018, a pair of laws designed to hold websites liable if they knowingly facilitated sex trafficking. Supporters hailed it as the end of the internet's safe harbor for traffickers. Critics argued it made sex work more dangerous, driving workers off safer online platforms and onto the streets. For the survivors, no law could undo the past. They had been photographed, advertised, sold. Many never got justice. Some never came home. And for Lacey and Larkin, their empire crumbled. The men who once controlled an alternative media empire worth millions had been reduced to defendants, fighting for their freedom as their reputations lay in ruins. Backpage.com was gone, but its legacy endures, a cautionary tale about greed, arrogance, and the darkest corners of the internet. It began in 2004 as a simple idea, an online classified site. By 2018, it was the most infamous sex trafficking platform in the world. Its rise and fall remind us that every click, every ad, every photograph on a screen carries weight. And sometimes, behind the code and the profit margins, there is a life, a child, a victim, a story, waiting to be seen. That is the true, haunting story of Backpage.com. Sleep well.